So now let's go to you, Ariel, to speak more about the necessity of the nuclear renaissance and cooperation with Central Asia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frederic. I want to thank Teva for an excellent report. Thank you, Franca, for your excellent presentation. We are working at the International Tax and Investment Center, the program that I lead, Energy Growth and Security, on strategic minerals, on nuclear renaissance, on LNG, on whatever is a current and important component of the ever-changing global energy economy. And our involvement in Central Asia and in Kazakhstan goes back to early 90s when both the president of ITIC, Dan Witt, and myself started traveling there and engaging with Kazakhstan. It was a very different part of the world back then. They just came out of the Soviet imperial dependency. The then president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, got rid of nuclear weapons, cut deals with American oil companies, and formulated with his then foreign minister, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, currently the president Tokayev, the multi-vector policies that Kazakhstan is following and other countries in the region are emulating. What is important is how Central Asia keeps coming back as a crucial resource supplier to the world, first in oil and gas, if you look at Turkmenistan and across the lake, Azerbaijan, oil in Kazakhstan, of course, and now uranium. Why is it important? It's important, as Franco mentioned and other sources demonstrate, that we are facing a massive increase of energy demand, of electricity demand, and nuclear is probably the most effective zero emissions baseload. The renewables are all fine and dandy, but when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing and your battery capacity is for about 43 minutes of consumption, like it is on average in the United States, if you take all the capacity with all the industrial batteries and average it out in the States, it's 43 minutes of consumption. So nuclear becomes very attractive. There were massive failures with Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima, but there is a renaissance of recognition of the importance of nuclear and the new generation of SMRs that were mentioned here that are coming back, and the world will need more and more uranium. So the concern about Kazakhstan and Central Asia, as you heard, is that the 4 finalists, China, Russia, North Korea, and France, for 2 reactors are probably going to be Russia and China in Kazakhstan. The SMRs in Uzbekistan are going to be Russia. So how the West can be engaged? You may say, why an American cares about how Europe, for example, or France are engaged in Central Asia. And the answer is, whatever the current administration is saying, there is such a thing as the West, even though we have deep policy disagreements between Washington and Brussels, or Washington and Paris or London. And the general commitment to the vision of the West, I think, will supersede whatever administrations we may have right now, wherever we have them. And therefore, the leader of nuclear energy in Europe, France, could play a role in Central Asia and in Kazakhstan in particular, if she so decides. And that role involves engagement, monetary commitment, monitoring, and deals. We heard that over 50% of the current Kazakh uranium reserves are committed to China, and the main processor of nuclear fuel that originates in the ore that originates in Kazakhstan, the formatting of the fuel is in Russia and has been for decades. And these are the ties that go deep. They go all the way decades back to the Soviet era. But nevertheless, with the multi-vector policy that I mentioned before, Kazakhstan is interested in engagement with non-Russia, non-China players, including Korea and France. So we are looking at low 20,000s of tons of uranium in 24, produced in Kazakhstan, largest producer, largest reserves. The projection for this year is between 25 and 26,000 tons of uranium. With Uzbekistan, it's lower. It's in 3,000 plus tons. But the projection of consumption of electricity consumption, when you go to Central Asia, as I do, you hear about interruptions of energy supply all the time. And they need to address that, including through building nuclear reactors. They're also building thermal stations. But I hope you agree that in a country like Kazakhstan, where 60 or 70% of electricity is generated from coal, it will be a great step forward in terms of emissions if a larger percentage of electricity is going to be generated by nuclear reactors. The other question I want to address is the outlook for economic development. The economic development in Central Asia, specifically in Kazakhstan, is towards technology. When several years ago, for those of you who track, colleagues here that I see who track, the Kaspi Bank, that's all online bank, went to London Stock Exchange, and I think they floated in Astana International Financial Centers. It was between $4 and $5 billion. That's money for a bank, for online finance, fintech. And Google, Amazon, and others are investing now $1.5 billion into the largest tech center in Astana. And there are software operations in Uzbekistan. And they proudly told me that they have programmers who work for $300 a month. And I was kind of horrified, but of course, your AI will work for cheaper than that. So maybe the low-cost IT developed in Central Asia will fill the niche between the software that is written by AI and software that is written by human beings, but there is a niche for cheaper tech and software development services that these countries are currently filling. So, to make a long story short, I'm not aware, maybe there is a program and you're going to tell us about it. I'm not aware of an EU strategic program how to develop uranium in Central Asia and benefit France, the French nuclear industry, and the rest of Europe. Of course, the Germans would tell you that there's no such thing as nuclear industry or shouldn't exist. How did that work out for Germany? ? I'm not going to get into that. But for those who are buying uranium ore and want to develop more nuclear fuel, including from the resources in Central Asia, my suggestion is share the technology you have to engage these countries and allow them to move up the technological chain. That's what they're expecting. They do not want just to dig and ship. They want go up the chain and manufacture in Kazakhstan. It can be done because the Chinese are doing it, not at a large scale, but they are forming nuclear fuel in Kazakhstan. Europe can be the lead in environmental standards, and I would encourage those who can provide the expertise, the regulatory, the technological aspects of safety. Why is it important? Because we see when it fails in Fukushima, in Chernobyl, etc. We don't want countries that are maybe somewhat on a lower level of overall technological development start with a technology that is important for them and, God forbid, fail. We don't want to go there. So Europe can play a great role in that. The corridors were mentioned. There are things that can be done to improve the speed and the ease of operations of transportation corridors, including getting nuclear materials out of Central Asia. I have a friend in Washington who has been doing this for decades. It can be done. It is done. It can be expanded and streamlined instead of going to Russia and to China. What else? Just a side comment, somebody mentioned that the grid in Kazakhstan is problematic. It is, but one thing Europe can do is sell technology, be it Siemens, be it French companies, to improve, connect, and optimize the grid. The grid in the 21st century that takes into account green energy, that can handle intermittency, is not the old Soviet grid that the USSR built in Kazakhstan, sometimes early in the 20s and the 30s with slave labor, gulag, or the labor of forcibly sedentized nomads of Kazakhstan. This is a very different situation right now with people much better educated. And speaking of education, that'll be my last point. When you're looking at much younger countries like Kazakhstan and especially Uzbekistan and others, these countries need clear pathways in education to get people good technical and professional education that makes those economies develop and keeps radicals at bay. So if Western technical institutes, universities, ministries, etc., can develop collaborative programs with these countries to train their technicians and their engineers, it'll go a long way to build the goodwill that will lead to more projects and more cooperation and making more money between Europe and Central Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariel. So we have a few minutes for questions. So let's start here in our amphitheater. Does anyone have any question? Or it can be around the table also if one of our guest speakers would like to ask question to others. Not in the room. So we have just, yes?
Thank you very much.
So maybe the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Akhur. I'm from Tajikistan and born in Uzbekistan. I'm really enjoying the discussion here, but not, I hope I wasn't late when like about the water management and stuff. We are having a lot of issues because of the scarcity of the water and of course the Soviet heritage in terms of the water management in Central Asia. Do you take into account that part of while like developing the nuclear reactors and stuff. Because I think, as far as I know, I can be wrong again, it's a huge discussion also in France as well, in terms of like water and stuff, the cooling, and of course the old reactor, but like.
I'm very glad you asked this question, because in the fall of 24, we published a report and presented it at the Atlantic Council. So if you Google Wesley's name, my name, and Alejandro, Wes, you there? Okay. And Alejandro, you will find that report. I don't have time now to go into all the details, but we're basically saying that water is an absolutely crucial commodity in Central Asia, especially in a country like Uzbekistan, that is double landlocked. There is climate change. The glaciers in the mountains are shrinking. The population is growing fast. The Aral Sea is a disaster. And it is really a disaster. I mean, for those of you who have a strong stomach, go online and look at the pictures of the Aral Sea. The Caspian water table is shrinking. So yes, you're absolutely right. There's an interconnection between the question of water and the water is needed for reactors. But at the same time, you can use water that is not fresh water to cool. You can build closed cycles, right? You could introduce my big hobby horse, replace old Soviet irrigation canals that are not even built to prevent water seepage by lining them with materials that prevent water seepage. You will save 40% of water that is currently wasted. Drip irrigation as opposed to arik or canal irrigation will save you huge amounts of water. So there are resources in terms of saving, optimization, and recycling of water. There are countries in the world that did very great progress on water technologies, and they're open to export these technologies. So very good question. Look at our report, but yes, things can be done in Central Asia. Thank you.
Just a question. In the first presentation, it was shown that Canada was producing more than the requirements. And in the second, that Kazakhstan was exporting uranium to Canada. So just wanted to ask, why is Kazakhstan exporting uranium to Canada?
Okay, so the important thing to keep in mind is what Franco mentioned. We are not using uranium. We're using uranium, which is first converted, then enriched, then transformed into nuclear fuel. Canada is the world powerhouse for uranium conversion. They have one of the largest conversion plants in the world. So Kazakhstan is exporting to Canada for two reasons. First reason is that one of the Canadian companies have joint ventures in Kazakhstan. So Cameco have the Inkai joint venture, so they are sending it there. And the second reason is that in the rest of the Western world, there's not enough conversion capacity. So we have to move it to Canada.
Okay. Oh. Maybe one question online. What about United States supply of uranium? Where it's coming from? What's the current difficulties? So,
Yeah. Typical. We're talking about Central Asia, and the whataboutism, kicks in. What about? Absolutely correct question. What about U.S. rare earth supply and mining? What about uranium? We have something called NIMBY. Who knows what NIMBY is? Not in my backyard. So some people want to go and dig for uranium or rare earth or whatever. And the environmentalists, environmental activists, maybe the state itself, especially if it's a state government of certain persuasion, not of other persuasion, and sometimes maybe even the red states, putting blocks on these developments. As a result, in rare earth, something we write about a lot, as a result, since the 1990s, China managed to build the capacity that was 70 or 80%, now it's going down to 60% of mining and close to between 80 and 90% of refining of rare earths, which are absolutely crucial for your iPhones, for space, for weapons, you name it. With uranium, it's a similar situation, and I'll give you one more in the spirit of self-flagellation. We could not figure out how to store spent fuel. They spent, I think, $30 billion, if I'm not mistaken, for a place called Yucca Mountain. First of all, it's a horrible name. Who calls anything Yucca? But it's a Yucca Mountain. It's in Nevada. And it was supposed to be this deep caves in the mountain. And then it was stopped through legal action. And nuclear fuel is stored mostly in barrels near the reactors right now. It's crazy, right? So these are the examples of how not to manage your uranium mining, your rare earth mining, your nuclear spent fuel storage, etc. Was that self-flagellation enough?
A little bit.